we all have particular characteristics or faults that are in us that are kind of, for better and worse, uniquely ours. And we spend many, many years just kind of struggling with them and grappling with them. At what point, if ever, does it become possible that we willingly kind of bear the cross? And I think, as you said in a recent talk, that you just sort of live with that pain. And I guess, does there ever come a point where even if you still struggle with it, that the struggle itself changes and you sort of willingly carry it?
Can you say it again?
So if you've spent a really, many, many years kind of carrying these particular parts of yourself that are kind of horrifying to you, and you've spent many, many years becoming acquainted with them and kind of having to live with them day in and day out, but always in a way where there's something in you that is just can't accept them and is just sort of reviled by them and sort of wants to run away from them. Is there a point at which the things inside of you that you see as awful and painful and that you want to run away from, that you can actually live with them in a different way?
You have to forgive me, Cassie. I have difficulty understanding, and maybe someone else can. It's not you, I assure you. It's mostly me. Not in a very talkative mood, but can you give an example?
Okay, so let's say that anyone struggles with, let's say, jealousy, and you've kind of been in very many situations where you sort of come face to face with that in yourself, and it's okay.
I'm sorry, kid. No. I think what usually happens when anybody talks, myself included, I think there are certain words that are just attractive, and that's because of my own experience, my own history, maybe my own, competency in certain areas and incompetence in other areas. So the places I feel like I don't really have much to offer, I simply just become deaf. I can't hear them. So you mentioned jealousy, and all these memories, come about when we were with Hussein some years ago. Sometimes we would go to the gatherings, and Mehrdad was just in a very, very interesting and intense mood. And for some strange reason, Hussein would look at him, and he was attracted to that particular mood of Mehrdad, or Hussein would be attracted to a certain same mood that the other Hussein had. And throughout the entire night, this is like 5-6 hours of sitting. It wasn't like this, where first you come, we have dinner, we chit chat for a little bit, you come to the back room for a couple of hours, and then we go home. It's like we go to his house at 5 and we leave like sometimes 2-3 in the morning. And for all those hours, the only person that Hussein would be attracted to would be either Hussein or Mehrdad. And you're not going to feel jealousy about anything or anyone if you don't have an emotional attachment to it. If I didn't care for Hussein, and if he hadn't occupied a good amount of space inside me, and if I didn't attach value to his perspective about various things, if I didn't care about the way he would judge me, he would look at me, I would never grow jealous. There are tons of people out there, and they have all sorts of things, but because I don't know them and because I don't care for the things that they have or they don't have, there is no envy or resentment or jealousy. So jealousy only happens when there is some history, there is some relationship, there is some attachment, there is some expectation. In other words, you put a value into something, and there's a certain outcome you expect. And sometimes it just comes as a shock, that at any event. So you go home from the car wash, you take a shower, and we usually we knew at a certain point we were going to maybe pray at Hussein's house, but I think all of us individually, Hussein, myself, and Mehrdad, would also do our own set of exercises before going to his house. And we were all nervous, because when you not just like someone, but when you fall in love with someone, the way you see them is very different than the way you see other people. Whether it's a figment of your imagination or not, that's besides the point, And you have all these narratives playing in your head. I'm going to go to his house, we're going to sit, he's going to do A, B, C, D, our eyes are going to meet. So you drive from Roseville to his house and you realize that Mehrdad's car isn't there and Hussein's car isn't there. So you wait, because I don't want to go in there by myself. It's too much, because it would just be me and Hussein, and just the way I felt about him, the way I looked at him, I probably burst into tears. So I needed some buffers, distractions, and that would be Mehrdad and Hussein. And so we go in, and even though, the three of us have been friends for a long time, we just greet each other very simply and very quietly and very briefly, and then Hussein comes in. We all stand up, we shake hands, sometimes we kiss on the cheek. And all of a sudden, like, Hussein just keeps looking at Mehrdad. I'm saying, why? And I keep looking at Mehrdad, making sure, like, he's no different than I am. But he looks the same as me. But there is something about Mehrdad that has interested Hussein. And this is at the early stages of, like 5-6 years into this stuff. And you want to figure out why Hussein keeps looking at Mehrdad. And you can't understand, you can't figure things out. And as he's like talking about whatever the conversation is about, you can't pay attention because the jealousy and the anger and the resentment is just like killing you from the inside. And you look to your right, there is Mehrdad. He has a tissue in his hand, and very quietly, like he's crying or he's teary-eyed. But despite being very good friends and being a very safe environment, he's so kind of embarrassed to have his tears run down his cheeks and for us to look at him. And you kind of try to interrupt or disturb the situation by raising your hand and saying, I know Mehrdad had ABCD question, but I have another question. And you don't really have a question. You just want to kind of make sure that Hussein is no longer paying as much attention to Hussein because you want some of that, Or even at music gatherings. I know you've been to thousands of them over the years. Once in a while, they would invite like someone we didn't know, and he would sit behind the microphone and sing. Now, usually they ask me to sit behind the microphone and sing, And every time I would stop, they would say, "No, continue, please." And all of a sudden, this new person comes in and they sing, and everybody applauds them. And here I'm sitting saying, "You know what? I'm not going to sing tonight." I do think if you're patient enough, and Cassie, there is no, I think, how to any of this. I think time passes. It's kind of like when you suffer a grief or a loss and you're grieving, and there are all these books trying to tell you that, if you do A, B, C, D, 6 months' time, you'll be fine. All I know is that there came a point, and I can only speak of personal experience, I don't know how other people are, but there just comes a point where you sit back and you realize that you just love this man, and you love the two people sitting to your right and to your left. And you're just glad to be there. And it's a community. And you don't really care if Hussein is paying attention to the other Hussein, or Hussein is paying attention to Mehrdad, and you kind of feel invisible. I am being nourished by the environment, and that's sufficient for me. And it took maybe 7-8 years for that to happen. The music gatherings took longer. Because I was much more invested at that point in my life in singing and in playing. And the problem with the music was that there was a good amount of Hussein that now lived inside me, and emotionally it was very, very intense. So when I used to sing, the lights had to be dim because I didn't want people to see the expression on my face, which was filled with, Persian music is just sad. And so when I kind of experienced other people being applauded for maybe the way they were playing the santur or the sitar or singing. I suppose you could say my feelings got hurt. But as time passed on, I really enjoyed being in the background. You know, I always encouraged Kazim to sing and to other people to kind of just sing. After a while, you just grow tired of wanting to be the center stage, so to speak. But the sort of jealousy that I'm talking about really has to do with me as a student and Hussein as a teacher, and Mehrdad as one of my best friends and Hussein as the other best friend. When you're talking about romantic relationship, that's an entirely different scenario. I think when you are a student or when you're on a quest, on a journey, the truth is it's very difficult to form a relationship with anyone, romantically speaking. And though you may feel jealousy that, you know, your companion is looking at another one, or, you know, they catch you looking at another one, another person. Either way, the foundation of that relationship is never going to gel, because as a student, you're changing all the time. You have no idea where you're going. You have no idea what's happening to you. And it is true that you can fall in love. It is true that you can say you love the other person to their face. It is true you may even be married or get married to this person, but it's going to fall apart. It's not going to last. You know, so that jealousy, even though valid, I mean, for those who are just in romantic relationships and don't care about ideas too much, jealousy is jealousy, Cassie. It's just devastating, period. You know, you just hope that in time, as time passes, something about you matures or grows or understands. And it doesn't mean that you can overcome any of these, I suppose, emotions that come out of the act of jealousy. You just pray that in time you learn how to manage them. But as your life shrinks, as your life becomes more focused, you become less jealous of things. And you only become jealous of the things that you value in your life. You know, it may be 2 things, another person may have 10 things that they care about. You can never get rid of jealousy, but what you can do is you know, Shadia met Hussein, I think, when she was 19 or 20. They were married for like 40 years. I think when Hussein died, just before his passing, I doubt very much he would think that when I die, after a few years, Shadia will overcome the grief of this loss. She'll find someone out there, she'll marry them, and she'll be happy. And I doubt very much Hussein felt or thought those things and had hints of jealousy because of those, you know, imaginations. Hussein had such depth that he knew that Shadia would never be able to find another person like him. You know, but Shadia had to see who Hussein was, and she did see. And because Shadia was so focused, her eyes wouldn't wander, you know, her mind wouldn't wander. She would look here and there, and not too many people she found attractive, you know. Was, I suppose, Hussein jealous in other areas? Yeah. I remember when we met this guy, Haqqi, and I don't know if you ever met him or not, you know, PhD from Oxford, acupuncturist from Maryland, physician from Iran. And when we first met this man, Haqi, he was like this encyclopedia. And then I remember, a few times when we were sitting and talking, and people would be asking Haqi question of Hussein. And then when Hussein would talk, people would dismiss him, but they would gravitate towards Haqi. Because the way he would talk, his mannerism, his body language, everything about Haqi was so different, and people were very much attracted to Haqi. And you could see once in a while Hussein looking at the rest of us. You could see once in a while Hussein just kind of bulldozed himself into that space and began to talk, to kind of vie some attention. I know I'm rambling on, but I suppose there are certain flaws you can just never overcome. I think the best thing you can do is figure out which physical spaces inspire the emotions you don't like, and just don't go into them. Um, I think whenever you just feel that there are certain emotions or thoughts that come forth that you don't like them because of the physical space you occupy, just don't go there anymore. Or be very cautious when you go in. But the idea of reading books or doing exercises to overcome the things that are just hardwired inside us, it's just a waste of time, really, I think. Be jealous for the good things. For the ridiculous things, I suppose you have no choice. It's just a waste of time, but you fall victim to them nevertheless. I'm sorry I didn't understand your question too well, but a few years ago, there was a part-time instructor at Laney who came to my class as a guest to just talk about some things, and she began talking about socialism and communism, and she talked about Karl Marx for a half hour, and I was sitting in the back, and there were like 60, 70 students just sitting back and listening and very much interested and inspired. I was looking around the room, and I said, I want that. I want, all that attention. I want my students to be inspired when I talk, but, they usually aren't because I don't really have much to say. So, did I go somewhere, try to read a book or do exercises to overcome this core characteristic of human nature, jealousy? No. I just didn't invite her to my class ever again. It's good, Cassie. Jealousy is good. When I think back about those gatherings and how sometimes it made me jealous, And we would go home and Mehrdad would call me the following day asking if, you want to hang out and do A, B, C, D. I'd be so upset. I would not even pick up the phone. But, there is nothing wrong with looking at a man in whom you see perfection and beauty and wisdom, and you worship him, and it's such a wonderful thing. There is no need to go to church, there is no need to read the Quran, there is no need to go to school. You just go to his house, Hussein's house, you look at him and you like tremble, he talks and it's like you want to burst out of your skin. And so, and you're worshipping this man. And so he keeps looking at your friend. Why wouldn't you be jealous? Sometimes, Mehrdad would say, like, oh, Hussein, I had a dream. And it was this environment where we were so intimate, all four of us, that if there were any dreams anyone had, they would share. And sometimes people had amazing dreams, and you would walk away from the gathering, like after 5-6 hours in the car, and you would hit the steering wheel really, really hard. You say, like, I pray 50 times a day, I fast, I never had dreams like this. So you're no longer jealous of Hussein's attention to Mehrdad. You're jealous because, I do these things, it seems like I'm being overlooked by God. So you know what? I'm just not going to pray anymore. And you wouldn't for a few days. And that's just the way things are. So sometimes you just see, instructors in the classroom doing such an amazing job. And I walk away saying, man, I feel so incompetent. I'm okay with feeling incompetent. At my age, what can I do? You just go and ramble on and you go home. Cassie, it really does take a long time to like yourself with all the awful things. But as long as you're young and you have energy and you refuse to accept, it's really good. It's really good. Because you just keep fighting, chiseling away some of the things you categorize as flaws. And it's a good thing. I assure you, in a few years, you won't care. I'm not quite sure which is best, to care or to not care. Sorry, Cassie. Abby, anything? This is usually what we do.
We talked earlier, Amir, about what it was like to meet Hussein G the first time you met him.
Hussein Qazvini was my mom's cousin. Hussein Mir Mubini is the guy we consider to be our teacher for a little bit. He wouldn't, of course, like that particular label, but he's passed, so it's okay. So Hussein M is the teacher. Hussein G is the one who's still alive but sick.
You had talked about how it took sometimes to recognize the teacher is gradual. Could you say more about that?
So I'm always going to go back to my own personal experience. I apologize if I can't give you like other people's stories. I wasn't interested in any of this stuff. I wanted to be a tennis pro. I wanted to be a soccer player. I wanted to be a musician. I was born in a religious environment, and I liked the ideas. If we talked about them, that's what we did for entertainment. But to become immersed in them and consumed by them, that wasn't my plan, really. So what you realize is you have a guy, a young, 19-year-old kid, who's just minding his own business, and he goes to gatherings because his father enjoys political and religious conversations. And what usually happens is, and remember, we're all like billboards, and there are things we advertise, knowingly or unknowingly. We're just advertising things, okay? Some people advertise their looks. Some people have like sad emotions, and that's the thing they advertise. Some people are curious about things, and that's what they advertise. And I suppose some people have spiritual, if you want to categorize it as that, spiritual questions, or they're seekers, or maybe they're teachers, and that's what they advertise. Now, whatever it is that anybody advertises, it requires customers. Sometimes you have customers in the sense that they have needs. Sometimes you go somewhere because you have a certain need. Sometimes you go somewhere not because you need anything. You're just like window shopping. You're not spending any money. You're not sacrificing money. You just are bored, just are going, okay? In my case, what happened after I think 4, 5, 6 months of interaction with Hussein, and these are like long gatherings, like 5, 6, 7, 8 hours, and it's intense. And when you're around someone who is good at anything, it doesn't matter what it is, you know, whenever they are at their craft, you can feel the intensity, and it's infectious, and it impacts you. You know, you can't but be impacted. You know, it's no different than going to a funeral where a mother is impacted by having lost her son. She wails, she screams, and you're impacted. You know, or you go somewhere and someone is depressed, and that impacts you. Okay. So Hussein, because of just his powerful presence, because he was very focused for about 20, 30 years of his life, you go there and he talks. That's like 5 hours of advertisement, you know. And what you don't know, what I didn't realize at that time, is that for 7 months, 2, 3 times a week, add to it the fact that he said to me, you know, Amir, I want to lose some weight. Can you come and play tennis with me? I said, okay, you know. And I would go there twice a week to Sacramento, you know. We played tennis. And in the course of playing tennis, he would just talk some more. Okay. Through the 5, 6 months of him just talking about things, all of a sudden, again, without me being aware, it's like a seed was planted and a need is created. Okay. Now, because this is Hussein's seed, because this is what he created, he was the only person I could go to have that need met. I couldn't go anywhere else. Okay. The only, I suppose, other sources I could go to were books, classical Sufi text, you know, very, very difficult to read. Someone like Hussein was very different. Hussein G, you know, my mom's cousin. Sometimes you have people who have certain things have happened to them in the past. And so despite their seemingly well put together facade, there is, if you remove those veils, you realize there are all these cracks here and there. They're looking for something. His marriage was tough, Hussein's marriage. And when your most intimate relationship is difficult, your home is just a house, and you feel homeless. And even though you have lots of money, you make lots of money, you kind of feel poor. Your money is wasted by your wife. You know, she used to shop all the time, watch TV till 2, 3 in the morning. So, and he's also an immigrant, you know. And so there were lots of things about him that were just troublesome. His physical life was difficult, but I think psychologically, for the most part, he was well put together. And that's Indians, Middle Easterners, Asians. The culture, despite all the awful things that happen to people, you know, I was telling Sarah this morning about, you know, Palestinians and Gaza. Despite all the devastation, you know, they have a foundation that's about 3,000 years old. You know, you can't destroy that foundation with bombs. It doesn't work that way. I mean, these people, despite having a very devastating physical life, they're very communal. They will get married. They will have children. You know, and they'll live a very, very healthy life. So Hussein was like that. And because Hussein had come from a very, very, very religious background, you know, that particular ingredient was always in him. And so when he met Hussein, it didn't take very long for that need that was under an avalanche of just physical life garbage. It kind of just pushes itself out, pushes all the garbage to the side. It comes out and comes to realize that Hussein can actually, you know, satisfy those needs. And he was much older. He was, I think he's right now 77, you know. So it was like 10, 15 years older than I am. And as you age, you know, things about your psyche kind of matures. You look at things differently. And that was certainly the case for Hussein. So I suppose the answer to your question would be that I was dim-witted. You know, I was a kid, distracted. I wanted to do a lot of things with my life. I became interested gradually without really knowing in what Hussein was talking about, and all of a sudden I saw that I think about him all the time, and I think about his ideas all the time, and I long to go to his house. And I don't know how it happened, but it took some time. You know, the other thing about we met Hussein at the right time. When Hussein got to be about 50 or so, we met him when he was 37, I think 36, 35. He had said that at the age of 50, 55, looking back, he would say he would have never had anyone over his house. You know, he would have changed the way he would talk about this stuff. And of course, we were a complete disappointment to him. Even when, you know, I had put my life together relatively nicely, he would often call me, or, you know, when we would go to Sacramento meeting, and say, Amir, you still don't amount to anything. I say, yeah, Hussein, I know, I don't amount to anything. Fine, thank you. I think if I had met Hussein in his 50s, and if I was to be attracted to his ideas, and if he had the power to create those needs inside me, he wouldn't be able to protect the needs or the need that he had created inside me. His life was busy now, he was older now. I think he had understood a few other things that he didn't know about teaching and learning. You know, when you're young, your luxury is time and energy. You know, so Hussein created the need. He was young enough, and I suppose hopeful enough, and kind enough to have us over his house all the time. There's a stage where need is necessary. I mean, you can't just want something. I want a lot of things, but need is very, very different. Need is an emotional relationship you have to something, and without it, you can't exist. I need it. You know, it's a very monogamous relationship to be in, and in any monogamous relationship, there's always going to be jealousy. And you know, sometimes I do wonder that if I had met Hussein a little later in life, still this 19, 20-year-old kid, and what would have happened if he didn't have the energy, or he didn't want to spend his time with the three of us, and he would rather spend his time with, I don't know, his family or writing or going to the woods. I think, given what little I know about human nature, that need would probably eventually be forgotten. You know, I would say, yeah, it would just be a kind of gossip now. But I don't really think it really matters whether the recognition is immediate or gradual. Once you feel as if there is someone out there who's interesting to you and can give you some of the things that you're looking for, if your life allows, you know, and if you can be a good politician, spend as much time as you can, if you're interested in those things. It could be anything, really. Because once I think the door shuts, it just shuts. It's very difficult to open it. You know, it's kind of like what we were talking about regarding the book, you know. You spend 5 weeks reading a 1,000-page book, and you know, the book creates these openings, and these openings create all these emotions and thoughts and dreams, and then the book ends. And it's finished. I mean, who knows when you're going to find another book like it. Yeah, I don't know how else to. Whether immediate or gradual, I think the less of a life that you may have, the easier it is. Because you don't have to worry about your companion, you know, seeing you depressed or mute. Or sometimes your kids feeling as if you're right there, but you're not really there. Life doesn't fit the stuff for a long, long time, you know. Once you have some maturity to you, then you can go back to life and kind of use life in ways that are beneficial to some of the things you understood about yourself. But until that time, it's going to be tough. But Hussein, you know, you would call him like at 2 in the morning, and he would say, "Come on." Sometimes you just had a rough night, and you call him at 8 in the morning and say, "You know, I'm just not doing well." And all of a sudden, he would show up at the car wash and stay there for like 5 hours. So, yeah. so much of your life has to be in order for you to be able to attend to the things that you care. You know, Hussein G, not the teacher but the student, he had some amazing experiences. I won't tell them to you, but he would like hear things, and he would wake up at like 2, 3 in the morning to perform some exercises, but he would see his wife, for example, watching TV with their 2-year-old or 3-year-old. And this refined interior, you know, all of a sudden would become agitated because you want your wife to go to bed and you want your kid to go to bed. And at 3 in the morning, now you have like a yelling match. And 3 hours later, you realize you're just drained. You know, you just go to bed and you hate everything. You know, going back to Chris, you know, remembering that he had said, you know, I don't need to go to school and get my master's or a PhD. I can just keep my bachelor's in philosophy from Berkeley and talk to my Zachary's customers, you know. And that's the thing about being a little older and having gone through a few things. And you hear this young kid saying all these ridiculous, stupid things. And you can either say, you know, another hippie, walk away, or, you know, you realize that there is something about this kid that you like. And this kid likes you too. And that mutual attraction to one another gives, you know, both of you a great amount of power. It gave me more power in the sense that I know he's 20, soon he'll be 25, then 30, then 40. And when you get old, going to school is tough, getting a degree is tough, finding a job is tough. So knowing that I, you know, had the power to kind of manipulate and coerce him, brainwash him a little bit, I said, listen, you can't do this. You know, you need to go to school. And, you know, he did. And I think it didn't take, Chris only came to my class maybe once or twice before coming to this, you know, place where he said, you know, I need to go there all the time. And those feelings were further protected and nourished by him coming here. We planted trees together, we worked in the backyard together. And look at him now, Princeton in a couple of years, who knows? You know, he'll probably be teaching at Stanford or Yale or Oxford or Princeton. And then you have to wait for him to get over his intoxication with power. You know, you have a PhD from Princeton or Yale or wherever. I mean, that's a tremendous amount of power. And power usually just makes you forget. It's just normal, it's natural. It's kind of like our good friend William. And, you know, you're either lucky enough to remember or you just get completely intoxicated, drunk by power for the rest of your life, and then it's finished. But if you enjoy these ideas, you have to kind of create for yourself a life that allows you to be maybe 10 hours a day around these ideas, and the other like 20, the other 14, you know, changing diapers and taking out the trash and talking to ridiculous people, you know, just doing just life. So yeah. Sorry for digressing all over the place. You know, it's tough to just like someone who's not good looking because you have no idea what you like about them. And ideas don't have a face, they just make you feel. Kendra, anything you want to talk about?
I was thinking that it seems like we all would like to think of ourselves as being as good people, and I was wondering if that is like a cultural thing or a universal thing.
I don't know about those things, Kendra, but when my father came here, he was 49. He retired from the oil refinery back home. I was a young adult. We bought a car wash. And I washed cars with him every day for 20 years. He was very lucky because he still is, this 92-year-old man almost. You know, he can sit back, he can look at us, the 3 kids that he has. And all of us have relatively healthy lives. So you can sit back and say, my time wasn't wasted. You know, as they say in Persian, we're a cane to our parents. They can rest on us. They can call us if they have anything, and we'll be more than happy to kind of just do what they want. I don't know how much time I have, but Sophia's 9. Yusuf is 8. Is it more valuable for me to spend a lot of time with him, or more valuable for me to spend my time on writing? Their future is unpredictable. Am I a good person to focus my energy on the things I want to do, or am I a better person by sacrificing what little time and energy I have and walk away from writing and give my time and energy to them? 2 kids who are very young, their future unknown in a culture such as this, where everywhere around them is just trash. Will you consider me good if I just focus on my writing? Or if you were to look at this a bit more detached, a bit more objective, would you consider me perhaps a better person, a better father, just a better person if I was to walk away from them and just focus on the things I want to do? I don't think all of us consider ourselves to be good people. I think there are areas of life that we feel that we're relatively okay at. We're hospitable, but only to certain people. Um, For the longest time, I had this belief that teachers are like moral and ethical. They never exploit and manipulate. That was just a very naive way of looking at, not just teachers, just life. You read stories about Gurdjieff. He would lie, he would cheat, he would sell fake things to make money and get himself from point to point B. If there are any ideas you enjoy, if there is any aspect of life that you enjoy, you should only be kind to them and be mean to anything that becomes an obstacle to your life and to the things that you like. I could have invited a lot of people tonight. There are lots of people whose company I no longer enjoy and I don't want to look at their faces. Am I not kind? Yeah, I'm not kind. It's okay. 5, 6 of us here, that's quite sufficient. And once you come to realize that, there are certain areas of your life where you want to give most of your attention to, and there are areas or people in your life you don't care about. That's okay. Right now, the only thing that you should worry about is getting a full-time job. That's the only thing. If Abby gets the job, sure, you can be happy for her, but accept the fact that you're going to be jealous and envious. You're not going to call her for a while until you heal, and then you call Abby and say, listen, what's the possibility of, getting me like a couple of classes to teach you in there? My best friend Mehrdad, we've been to gatherings together for, a decade. We were roommates before that even. Once he got married, I was so upset that But my best friend had left me. I didn't talk to him for about 6-7 months. And from that point on, it just fizzled out. You become a bit more autonomous, more independent. You'll grow meaner as you come to appreciate some of the things that life just takes from you, like your time, like your energy. We don't want other people to waste your time so much. So you're not as kind, which is good. You know. If many years ago you didn't, invest your time or energy in studying humanities, I probably wouldn't have invited you to the house. You wouldn't be that interesting. Are we friends? Yeah. Do I like you? Yeah. But, this for you is like a hit and run. Life is busy, swallows you, chews you, spits you out. One morning you wake up, you feel kind of empty and useless, and you call me and you say, Amir, can I come to the house? For what? You just want like 10 minutes of inspiration. You can find other avenues for that. But since your life revolves around this stuff now, the story is very, very different. I don't mind being kind. And that's just the way you are as an instructor to your students. Those who come to your office and ask how to write a better essay for an A, you take them less seriously than someone who says, today your conversation, the lecture you had, it impacted me and I can't stop thinking about that stuff. What do I need to do? You give them more time. You're much more serious with them. You're kinder with them. So pick and choose always. Don't be kind so that other people can like you. It's not worth it. There is a sect in the Sufi tradition, they're called the Malamatis. Not only do they profoundly dislike the sort of imaginations or narratives their imagination creates for them, they also don't like people very much because people are like waves, the ocean or the sea, that your reflection is always unclear, filled with ripples. That's what people are. And so what they would do constantly was to go against the public trust, public opinion. They would do things sometimes on purpose to make themselves look bad, to suffer the negative judgments of people. They enjoyed pain very much. Yeah, Baba.
Good night. See you tomorrow. Good night.
Good night, Sophia.
Good night, Sophia. Good night, Yasa.
شب بخیر بابا. شب بخیر بابا. But again, it takes, like anything else, it's a craft. When to be kind, to whom, how. Give it 20 years. I am just beginning all of this stuff. It's something I always, sometimes when we gather, I share this, that when we were with Hussein, and usually whether it's instantaneous, immediate, or gradual, and if you're having this love affair with your teacher, most of your dreams are going to revolve around him, this person. Once in a while, I have this itch, of looking for this journal. I don't know where it is, but I spend 5-6 hours looking for it, and I find it. And I read through some of the dreams, after 30 years, I say, and that's how most of this stuff works, It really takes a long, 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 long time. I would never talk about Hussein. But as, I become a bit more clear, as I gain more clarity, kind of look at my life, and all the things that he did. Now, 40 years later, I'm slowly beginning to understand. So most of the questions that we ask, and most of even the answers that we receive, give it about 20, 30 years. Anything?
I was going to ask in class the other day. I've heard you say a couple times that that women are bad teachers, but very good students. And I think I know. I think I know what you mean when you say that. And I'm wondering if it has to do with the way that a teacher has to wound you, so that there's sort of an entry point for the learning to come through. And I'm wondering if it's just wondering if women haven't really been taught to wound in the way that men have, and that maybe that's part of the thing that keeps them from being great, I guess.
Well, there may be a really, really, really good woman teacher out there I haven't encountered. I'm sure there are many out there. But the ones that I have encountered, whether in person or on YouTube, they're really bad. Not that men are any better. So there are a couple of things. You can be a really, really, really good woman teacher, but you have to be very old. And you can't be a young woman teacher. And if you're a young woman teacher, you need to have women students. You can't have a men student. Simply because it takes a man a long time to get to a place where you see a woman as a teacher and not as an object, just physically speaking, biologically speaking. And that's just one part of it. I think there is something that's missing in men, and I don't know what it is. And I can't really articulate this stuff well. Whatever it is that is missing in men makes them wanderers, makes them unstable. Women don't have that problem. I mean, sure, you have a few here and there throughout history, but even the women wanderers, the way they use language to describe what it means to be homeless, what it means to be a student, what it means to be a seeker, even expressing or writing their experiences down, it just smells different. There's nothing bad about it, you know. And it may be that my own bias, because my teacher was a man, and a few other people that I respected and learned from and kind of loved were also men. I have difficulty. I worked with one woman for a short period and her daughter, but you know, it was very, very different than the way I felt towards my male teachers. So there's a good amount of my own ignorance involved in this, my own biases, incompetence, and all the other flaws that Cassie talked about. Just the word flaw. It's a great question. I really don't know how to answer it articulately, rationally, or well. It's mostly intuitive. Whatever is wrong with men, you know, there are lots of things. When they encounter a teacher, and if there is a love affair between the two men, and if the student doesn't envy the teacher's position, and if the student is broken in the right way and continues to remain broken for a long time, and to some extent even come from the right tradition and the culture, maybe I should just do it this way. If I was to ask you how you made your cake, give me the recipe, and if you could maybe just point out the steps I need to take. Tomorrow you'll probably send me a text that's 2 pages long. Number 1, number 2, number 3. These are the steps you have to go through. It becomes very scientific, very rational, Your feelings are not really involved. You just know that if you want to give me the recipe to come to this particular cake, these are the steps I need to follow. And I think men are much better in not only creating the physical space, but also creating a language that allows for the recipe, step-by-step recipe. And then because, again, there is something that's missing in men that makes them into a wanderer, that period of being homeless that pushes you into the desert life where you have no one. You're basically mute for a long time. You have a lot of intense feelings, but you can't express them. I think in time they do something to your psyche. And once you come out of that solitary life, you want to maybe talk about your experiences, but you don't want your experience to sound like fluff. And you also want to understand exactly what you went through and how you went through them and why you went through them. Which means that you have to kind of stand outside of yourself, outside of your emotions, and kind of look at the experiences and reflect on them, write about them, maybe talk about them. And after many, many, many years, now to some extent, you can kind of speak about this stuff in a scientific way. I mean, step by step, that's what I mean. Again, there may be women out there who can do this. I just haven't encountered. In the relationship between the student and the teacher, you need specific kinds of emotions. And these emotions take all sorts of different shapes. All the things that you experience in a romantic relationship exists in addition to all those emotions. Exists this other emotion that has to do with your desire for a certain beauty that you don't really understand. And it may be part of our chauvinistic culture that history hasn't really allowed men to maybe view women teachers the way we view men teachers, you know. I can't explain this stuff in a way to convince anyone. Even I am not convinced by the way I've explained it, you know. And maybe, I may be wrong about the whole thing. It really ultimately may have to do with the sort of journey you go on with a teacher, whoever that may be, whether it's a man or a woman. And how in-depth that particular teacher is, what your capacity is as a student, the intensity of feelings, and to some extent they have to be mutual, how harsh the teacher is. The book you're reading, the author, Irina Turi, had a student, Annette Kaiser. Annette was married with, I think, 3 or 4 kids, had a relatively good job, made a good amount of money. I don't know much about her life story except that there are hints that she didn't have a happy marriage. She read this book. She was interested in the person who wrote this book. She traveled to a certain place because Irina was giving a talk. She became attracted to Irina. She quit her job, I think. She divorced, or maybe the divorce was coming regardless. And she became a teacher. When I listen to her, it's nonsense. When I listen to Irina on her some of the videos, it's not interesting. Maybe I've just become way too arrogant. I don't know. Maybe I want someone to come out and just say how difficult this stuff is, and nobody's saying it. Maybe I'm just looking for someone to be honest enough to say, listen, it'll get you really depressed. It'll get you really lonely. You'll hate yourself for a long time. You will have suicidal thoughts. Love is not what you think. Teacher is not what you think. This stuff is not what you think. And nobody says those things. And the truth is, divorcing your family is tough. Divorcing your history is tough. Divorcing all the things you like. Divorcing your friends. Divorce is divorce, You create relationships with people. And they keep you company, you like them, and then one morning you wake up and you hate everything, including yourself. And that's not a fun place to be. And, I read these books and I listen to these people on YouTube, and it's just fluff. And, and so maybe that's my issue, Maybe I just don't like people coming out telling me that this stuff is easy. Learning is easy, teaching is easy. I think if you can find a woman teacher to whom you're attracted, and that seed of attraction is protected by your teacher and can blossom into, love. And if she can protect you, nourish you, there's nothing wrong, it's good. But there is another thing, regardless of whether your teacher is a man or a woman or a kid. when you love something, it changes you. You know, it doesn't matter if the other person loves you back. The very fact that you love this person, it changes you. And time will reveal the depth of that love and the depth of the person that you love. The more depth that person has, the more your love will endure. And as your love grows, you grow with that. It changes you from inside out. So I guess whether it's a man or a woman, it's at the end of the day it's irrelevant. If you love that person immensely and intensely, that's, I think, the key to your salvation. In the 10 years that we spent time with Hussein, a couple of times during our gatherings, not during, as we were going to drive to his house, he would call and say, "We can't gather tonight." And we would say, "Why?" "I'm busy, I have things to do." You have no right to your life, you messed the three of us up, and now you're saying they can't come over your house. The idea that teachers really do make you homeless, and while you're having a difficult time, you really are all alone. It takes you, I think, maybe 10 years or so. Once the dust settles, you're able to go back in time, and you're going to kind of look at some of the things you went through, and then you're going to enjoy them immensely. But while you're in the process, while in the grieving mode, things are somewhat devastating. And one of the ways that you protect yourself against this devastation is we have friends. I don't know what I would have done without Mehdad or what I've done without Hussein. Despite going or having gatherings with Hussein, we had family gatherings, and Hussein was in all of them. We had music gatherings, and Hussein was in all of them. Cassie was 17 when I first met her. She came to our gatherings for 10, 15, 20 years, She learned how to play the sitar. She learned how to sing. She learned how to speak Persian and write Persian. And she had a companion named Carolyn Colum. They were friends for about 20 years, You need support system. And it can be fluff. It doesn't work that way, because if you are broken and she is broken and Abi has been the cause of your brokenness, well, the two of you, the person you have in common is Abi. You understand Abi's language. The both of you are attracted to Abi, The both of you are jealous because Abi pays her more attention than you on a specific night. And so there are so many common things that the two of you share. And so she's going to be your mirror for the next 10 years. Whenever you have a problem, you call her and she picks up the phone and you guys gather and you talk endlessly. It doesn't even have to be about philosophy or any of the stuff. It could just be gossip, about the stars for like 10 years. But because you know that her interior is made up of Abi and your interior is also filled with Abi, that will sustain the relationship for a long, long, long time. This is not the answer to your question whether men are better or women are better or any of that stuff, but mostly that whoever this teacher is, regardless of their gender, you need a community, and it doesn't need to be a community of 25 people. One person, another person, who can kind of understand to some extent what you're going through and what you will go through. Yeah. By the way, I apologize. I don't mean to say that women teachers are no good. They're very good. I've only read about maybe 4 Sufi women who were really good in books. That's all. And thousands of men. Stacy, anything?
Could you talk about what makes a good intellect?
I don't know if Gurdjieff is right about the Enneagram or the 9 different personality types, because the emotional center for each of the 9 different personalities are different. The reflective or intellectual capacity and abilities are different. Some personality types have very strong and intense emotions but weak intellects. That's just the way they're wired, you know, and reflecting deeply, observing, paying attention to things closely, it's just not part of who and what they are. They feel intensely. And then there are those people who just think a great deal and reflect really, really well, but they're kind of disabled when it comes to feeling intensely. So that's the first thing. And again, I don't know how right or wrong Gurdjieff is about all these different types and subtypes. I think whenever you try to understand something really, really well, and it has to come with, I think whenever you're disturbed, there is pain, and you're curious perhaps, you're interested. Let me also, before any of that, just say that if you're talking about teachers and students, students have no right to think. For 15, 16 years, whenever I would call Hussein, whether during gatherings when I considered him a teacher or after when he was only a friend, he would always say, "Who gave you permission to think?" So, I'm sorry, I will not think from this point on. I think as a student, what you ought to do is just be a bundle of intense emotions, all revolving around the teacher, you know. And whenever life seeps into your world and creates a mess or creates some chaotic events or situations, you don't yet have the capacity to think well about anything. I mean, look, you have your life, and you created your life by the act of reflecting and thinking and making plans for the future, feeling about certain things. Upon encountering a teacher, all these things slowly fall apart. Okay, and as each piece falls apart, it's going to come with a great amount of loss, grief, feelings, and you don't know what to do with these feelings. You know, you want to swim to the top, not to be drowned, but you will get drowned. Okay, and the only person who can support you is the person you're working with, who has, to some extent, created a situation where your life no longer matters as much, or the things you thought were valuable are no longer as valuable. So you kind of, you know, one day you go here, next day you go here, you're just all over the place. All you know is that your emotions are just flaring every single day, and you have no control of anything. Now, one of the things about us, the sort of animals that we are, is that the most important thing that you want to do in your life is to have power. Power allows you to predict the future, to control the future, to make the future. Anything that robs you of power, it makes you weak, it makes you lose control. And we don't like that feeling, because it's bound to make you sad and depressed and angry and enraged, okay? And so if, again, you're working with someone, you're not yet at a position to think, reflect, to process. The only thing you can do, I mean, you will try, but you will not succeed. You will feel and you will feel and you will feel and you will feel for a long, long time. At the same time, you have to stay very much in contact with the person you're working with until, if your teacher is filled with fluff, that's how you're going to eventually define and express life experiences, with fluff. Things happen for a reason, you know. If on the other hand, you're working with someone who has been in the business, and one of the, again, best examples of someone who really knows how to think well is someone like the Buddha, you know, that he doesn't tell you you have fallen in love with this person because God wills it. He says, well, you know, love is a desire. Let me tell you how it came about, okay? If you hang out with someone like the Buddha for a long enough time, and he is mean enough to punish you every time you say, I feel this way and I feel that way, little by little, you will lose your ability or your desire to express your feelings before this person. And you just sit back and you ask. And the way I think someone like the Buddha would respond to some of the things that had caused certain feelings, little by little you begin to think like this person. And the more you associate with someone like the Buddha, and the more you begin to kind of try to mimic him, to plagiarize the way he is, which is a really, really good thing to do, you realize that when you're no longer with him and life has brought an event into your life that has caused a lot of feelings, you're not going to sit and think too much about the feelings. What you want to do is you want to understand the feelings. You want to figure out the causes of the feelings. And little by little you realize that you're walking away, you're becoming more detached from the feelings and more attached to your ability to observe, to pay attention, you know. You know, feeling the right way about things, it's an art. It takes years. Thinking about things the right way, dissecting them, seeing them, and then the moment you begin to see, you have another set of feelings and emotions coming up. Now you have to process a whole host of things. And then you can't reflect on these in isolation. You have to write them, or you have to talk to them with your community of friends. You know, you're in the hospice care business, and you know that when you have a son, or you have a daughter, or you have a father who's seeing his son die, and it's an emotional place. But because you've been in that situation so often, so many times over the past like 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years, you no longer care about the emotions. It doesn't mean that you don't feel, it doesn't mean you don't care, it doesn't mean that you're not going to act kindly towards another who's in pain. But you understand the grief, you understand what people go through, you understand the sort of emotions that they're going to have, that there's going to be a time where they feel depressed, they need to talk, they need to be left alone. You understand all of these things, but the person who's going through these doesn't have a clue. And so they feel, and they cry and they scream. You, on the other hand, you're much more composed. And it's simply because of experience, you know. I think it's something that's well known in your business. You know, if a father has lost a son and he's screaming, you, as a guide, it would not benefit the family if you were to wail and scream with them. You know, you kind of sit back, you're a bit more composed. And when things have calmed down a little bit, you tell these people, you know, let me tell you how you feel. For some people, it's not necessary. They're just feelers, and that's all it is. Yeah. I think the best thing you can do if someone feels that they are the feeler types, they should never hang out with someone who is overly intellectual. Because the more you express your feelings and the more they try to kind of intellectualize what you're going through, the more you are going to feel betrayed and hurt. and it's not worth it. But sometimes it's good to have someone put your feelings into language. That's more rational and less poetic. Sometimes you're just in the mood to read Khalil Gibran. It's very poetic. You know, tears and laughters. You know, man is a lonely island. It's beautiful. Are you on anything? Since this is your first time, who knows, maybe the last time. You come to realize that this is a joke. Why do people come here and talk about this stuff? I'd rather be home sleeping.
Unless they just have personal questions.
That's okay. I mean, those are the best kinds. I don't know if you feel comfortable. But if you do, you can.
How did you meet Sarah?
What? Sarah was. It's something you should ask Sarah. But I'll just tell you this much that um, I'll tell it to you this way. When I was having some chest aches, I had a primary care doctor, I just call him Joe. He had been in the business for a while and he had become a bit more careless. Careless. And so I would go to him and say, I'm having some pain. And he would say, well, don't eat too much tiramisu. I said, okay, don't take it. Then one day I got a letter in the mail that he retired and another person had taken over and she's going to be the primary care. I remember a few times walking to my office. It was a period when the elevators were not working, so every time I walked up the stairs, every floor I had to stand for a little bit, wait, catch my breath, and then go another floor, and then wait, and then go another floor. And then by the time I got to my office, I would just collapse on the chair, sit for a few minutes to catch my breath. And so I went to her, and she said, well, 10 minutes later, she said, let's do a stress test. And one thing led to another, and next thing you know, I'm in the surgery for about 10 hours. And this is not about so much Sarah and myself, but just how certain things work in life, I think. And I don't know how it happens. Let's say you're a very, very stable woman and you're single. Okay. And you're in your mid 30s. And you have a man walking around. You're single. But there is a man who's walking around and he's desperate for stability. And he's a really, really good man. There is something you have you want to give. There is something that he needs and he's ready to receive. You know, and it's the readiness. All of us need things, but sometimes you're not ready to receive what's given to you. And so you meet at Pete's, and it doesn't take very much, you know. It's gradual, of course, but 2-3 weeks or months later, you realize that there is something solid about you, and you're ready to settle down. And this is a man who also, and you happen to be his rock. So you become in this scenario masculine, he becomes feminine. You give and he receives. So but yeah, for details, you should call 916. Yeah. Is there anything else you want to talk about? I know you're tired.
So I've seen a quote that is attributed to Rumi, but I'm not sure where it's supposed to have come from or if it's. But it's something along the lines of your heart has to keep breaking, or you have to keep breaking your heart until it opens. So what's up?
Rumi has 6 volumes of Masnavi. فيه ما فيه. كليات الشمس. You know. I don't know what that is. Let me approach it differently. Forgive me. We are, all of us express ourselves according to our history. You know, Rumi is not a plagiarist. He's not someone who like reads Plato and then tells you and I what Plato talked about, prose or poetry. Things just ooze out of him, you know, and this particular code, it forces me to ask myself, you know, what sort of a man would come up with such a line that your heart has to keep breaking again and again and again until it finds some healing. The truth is, when our hearts break, even one time, it takes a long time for it to heal. And most often it doesn't even heal. Most of the time, under the scab, there is a great amount of resentment and anger and rage. And it only takes someone to push a certain button for us to explode. We're not, again, the sort of animals that enjoy pain. We don't like to bleed. We don't like our hearts to be broken. You know, I don't want to go into relationships to give someone my heart and have these people keep breaking it over and over and over again, I think I'll just end up in an insane asylum. There is no healing in that. So Rumi didn't write any poetry before meeting Shams. Not a line, as far as I know. From what little I know and have read, Rumi was not a poet, you know. Rumi loved his father. His father died around the age 81 or 82. And when he himself was 21, he began teaching. And, you know, he gave lectures. He was worshipped by his time. Now, if you consider the human heart to be the home for desires, the human heart desires all sorts of things. And every time you have a desire, and that desire is intense, and you don't reach that desire, something about your heart just breaks. If you have something, and your heart is attached to that thing, and if something takes it away, your heart breaks again. So, because there are 8 billion people on this planet, because all these 8 billion people want different things, they all have a physical heart, but inside this heart lives different desires, different attachments, different hopes and dreams. I think when Rumi talks about these things, he's talking about a very, very specific kind of a heart, you know, and he himself did not have a heart until he met Shams at the age of 37. Now, and if you had asked this question at the very beginning of this evening, you would have covered all the questions to some extent. The relationship was intense and it was immediate. This guy comes in. Now remember, inside the heart of Rumi is the fact that he has power. He has like a town, entire town, his disciples. People come from afar to listen to his sermons. He likes himself, and he likes his knowledge about the Islamic tradition. It takes about maybe half hour, 45 minutes for this man to walk in, ask a seemingly silly question, but that question had depth that only Rumi could see. An hour later, Rumi's interior is just turned upside down. He wants to go figure out who this man is, where he is. Eventually he finds him. And what this does is, within like a couple of hours, Rumi falls in love with this man. It's what we call Ahl Jazabe. Something about him just gets pulled up. And Shams had come to realize that Rumi enjoys certain books, certain types of literature, and certain thoughts and certain emotions, and he forbids him from reading those books, and he forbids him from giving sermons. He doesn't allow anyone inside the room. It's just him and Rumi. Rumi and Shams. So what you have is a heart that's filled by just this old man, this 60-year-old man. He gives, and by this time, that encounter had, to some extent, I suppose, emptied, whatever Rumi enjoyed about himself. In about 2 months' time, the attachment and what lived inside Rumi was all Shams and nothing else. Shams leaves, and Rumi's heart is broken. He's devastated, he's depressed. his disciples had imagined that if they were to somehow push Shams out of Rumi's life, they can once again get their teacher back. I mean, that's what they talked about, jealousy and all that, you know. This newcomer comes into town, robs your teacher, steals your teacher from you, and you're kind of left empty. I mean, we're like 400 students. And Rumi doesn't talk to anyone. His heart is broken. It's bleeding. Now, what did he see in this old man? I don't know. Let's just, I suppose, generically just call it beauty. Something about this man fascinated, inspired. You know, Rumi. The old man was his home. So when he leaves, his heart gets broken. He sends a group of people after them to find out where this old man is. Eventually they find him. And he says, I'll come back one condition. Your disciples have to kind of say sorry to me for all the, you know, ways they behave towards me. And they say, okay. They go to Shams, they apologize. And once again, joy, you know, enters into Shams, and into Rumi's life, and he's happy. But again, the doors are shut. It's only him and Shams. But jealousy overtakes the disciples again. And Shams leaves again. And Rumi again gets depressed for a long, long, long time. And I don't know how this happened. I don't think anybody knows. It's a mystery, and I think it ought to remain a mystery. And I'm guessing after 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks or months or years, something about Rumi opens up. He didn't love Shams for his body. Maybe initially he did. And no one knows what exactly these two people did, you know, behind closed doors. But whatever they had done, it had impacted greatly the very foundation, nature of Rumi, you know. There came a point where Rumi said, I don't need to go out to look for Shams anymore. Shams now lives inside me. You know, that's the healing part. And what he does to express that healing is that he writes Kulliyat Shams, almost 800 poems, and they're really, really difficult to read and understand. I usually don't like to approach that book because I don't know what the hell he's talking about. You know, words are too big, they're too complicated. There is a good amount of symbolism in it, which I don't really enjoy because of the complexity of it. And then Rumi again gets depressed. And he gets depressed because the inspiration that lives inside you can only generate so much life about you until it depletes. Then Rumi gets depressed. And every time you get depressed like that, something about you just breaks and you're just bleeding. He says, I'm looking for someone, a physical human being, not angels, not God, not the Quran, no prayer, no meditation, none of those things. I'm looking for like a physical human being that I can look at. And I want to be inspired by that person. You know. He finds this person, some blacksmith, you know. And this blacksmith is uneducated, can't pronounce anything the right way, you know. But Rumi finds like gold inside this man. And he comes to life. Depression goes away, joy takes over. He begins to write the Masnavi. And then this man dies. And he goes into depression again. And again he says, I'm looking for like a physical human being that I can look at. I can feel something about his voice, about his eyes, about his just physical body, about what lives inside him. And then he finds him again, Chalabi. And Chalabi dies too, And then he said there were 3 people in my life. Shams was the son. I forget the other guy. One was the moon, and this last guy, Chalabi, was the star. That all these 3 people kind of guided me in life and inspired me and helped me to kind of continue my life. There came a point where he just had no energy left inside him. Nothing could inspire him. He couldn't write anymore. I mean, his last book, the 6th volume, was never written really. It was incomplete. So I think the quote that you shared really had to do with a very specific kind of a human being who went through a very specific kind of life experiences, who got broken by certain experiences, got depressed. The outcome was poetry. The outcome was wisdom, understanding. Not very many of us can be broken by life and come out with light. Maybe just near the very end of your life, you kind of sit back and reflect and you gain some wisdom. And you can share them with your daughters or granddaughter or whatever. But I think once someone like me, a very ordinary, casual person, gets hit by life and gets ravaged, there is no healing in me. I just wait and wait and wait until this disaster is over so I can just forget all about it and just move on to another distraction. That said, you don't need to look at Rumi's poetry the way I do. If you can find stories shared by Rumi that work for you, for your life, for where you are in life, you should use them. People just occupy different positions in life. And if something works for you, it works for you, it's good. If life has broken you in a certain way and you're just bleeding, let's just say, hypothetically speaking, and if Rumi's line can help you cope with, some of the uncomfortable events in life, then that's good. You shouldn't pick up his work and say, well, my heart is different, therefore I shouldn't go near this book. You shouldn't do that. Abi, anything? If there is nothing, there is nothing. Just I just do what Hussein did.
I'm sorry.
I'm just doing what Hussein used to do. That's all. But if there is something, Cassie,
I don't think my questions are
it's okay.
very good tonight.
They're always good, Cassie.
I remember some time ago you talked about how, and I guess it's related in some ways to what you were talking about tonight, that one should really appreciate being able to look at a teacher and to see that teacher as an embodiment of God, or beauty, because there may come a time when that, I think you talked about how there came a time when you couldn't look at Hussein that way anymore, and you said that you had to kind of create things for yourself. And just in the story about Rumi needing to find a physical embodiment of that beauty. Not sure what I'm trying to ask, but just if what we are all searching for is some quality of that beauty down here, you know, in a world of tables and chairs, and I'm sorry. It's really
good.
hard to express. I guess I'm just wondering if you don't have a physical image anymore that embodies that. How can you be inspired?
I mean, first of all, I think it took me 30, 40 years to be able to put words, you know, to the things all of us felt, or at least I felt. I can't speak for Mehrdad and Hussein. While we were with Hussein, we wouldn't think this way. you know, you would just say, you know, I'm going to his house, and you wouldn't talk about like, I love him. It doesn't work that way, you know, especially from our culture that happens to be so profoundly reserved in some things. You know, every time we went to gatherings, I mean, not Hussein's gatherings, but family gatherings or so, we would always look at Hussein's cup, tea. The moment it was empty, Hussein and I would compete. You know, who's gonna go to the kitchen, grab another cup of tea, and give it to him? And he usually would win because he was much more attentive to these things than I. We would never use the language of Hussein as an object of worship. You know, there is this poem by Baba Tahir. تو که نوشم نئی نیشم چرایی تو که یارم نئی پیشم چرایی تو که مرهم نئی زخم دل ما نمک پاش دل ریشم چرایی. Or something even, I think, simpler would be, you know, Hafiz, that Hussein looks at me and my pain increases. I look at Hussein, my desire for him increases. And it's a funny thing. That, I mean, in essence, it's the same thing, because both Baba Tahir and myself, we are talking about a man or someone you're working with, and he becomes a symbol of worship. His house becomes the church. His body is something. And we've talked about this, that one day he, you know, he's coming to sit and he's wearing his pajamas, and there is a like a big hole right in the middle of his jammies, and you know, this is Hussein. You know, you desire all of him, not just part of him. I don't care about just his intellect. I want his soul, I want his body. That's how it's a very strange place to be, you know. But you don't have the language because you don't think about this stuff. You just are a container of feelings, and your feelings are erupting, and you go through mood swings like 50 times a day. You know, time passes. And you look at all these books and you say they have nothing to offer. You go to school and you go to your meetings and you say, well, these people really don't have anything to offer. In desperation, you go to YouTube in hopes of finding someone who can say something that's interesting, and it's just bumper sticker. And you say, man, you know, how could I have been so stupid? You know, there was this man for 10 years. That's a long time, Cassie. You know, it's not a woman having a male teacher and being in love with a male teacher. This is a man falling in love with a man teacher. You know, to the point where he allows this teacher to kind of create and recreate one's interior. And then you sit back and realize, you know, I want to be inspired by something out there. There is nothing. And so you sit back and you say, you know, those 10 years were really, really good. Now I'm able to put language to those experiences. you wouldn't want to read the Quran, but you would enjoy very much listening to the commentaries on Quran coming from Hussein's mouth. Uh, to go to someone's house, that part in Kierkegaard's, that book that he has, Fear and Trembling. You sit in your car and you say, okay, maybe I should go in now. But you don't know how to go inside the house. Do I put my right foot first or left foot first? Do I shake his hand? Do I give him a kiss on the cheek? Because it was during those decades, it was really just difficult to just look at him. And he may have just been an ordinary human being, But the way I looked at him, and the way Mehrdad and the way Hussein looked at him, our perspective and our vision of him made him something more than human. And that was enough, that was sufficient. I don't care if Hussein was the devil, but he made me interested in philosophy, And yes, through him I went through lots of ups and downs, but eventually I got a job. And you met me, and then you met Hussein, right? And even if Hussein was an awful human being, you are now a professor. And you're making your living playing with ideas in the classroom. And that's true for her, and that's true for her, and that's true for her, and eventually for her. Because I saw a man being more than a man, but it took almost 3-4 decades for me to go back in time and appreciate everything. It's kind of like, Yusuf, he is tough. Every single night there is like a screaming match. He tells me I'm stupid, I tell him he's stupid. Not really, but it's a fight, to get him to do anything, to pick up his shoes even. And then every time this happens, which is every night, from 4 in the afternoon all the way to the time he goes to bed, And these 4 hours always reminds me of what I put my parents through. And now I'm able to appreciate how patient they were, how forgiving they were, how kind and generous they were. And when I become aware of those things, and thankfully they're still alive and healthy, whenever they call me asking me for anything, it doesn't matter what it is, I jump, get in my car, and I drive. And I don't care if they want to come with me, But it really does take a long time to, at least it did for me, And I think I'm also physically in a position where I can say that. Mehrdad, he worked for the state. He's depressed. He has 4 kids, they're depressed. Because the ideas and his lifestyle, they don't mesh well. The other Hussein, he was in a coma, blind. He can't do anything, nothing. Mehrdad can't say, I'm really happy about my life. I'm not saying everything about my life is good, but I'm in the classroom, I write, And once in a while I'm lucky enough to have students who become interested, so much so that they go and get the degrees and, they play with ideas in their own way, their own unique capacities. And, not only are they interested in these things, but they also make a living. That's a wonderful place to be. And it's all because of Hussein. You know, I think I've lost the ability to be able to, I don't know, go out there and look for another Hussein. I don't even think, it doesn't happen by looking anyways, but so yeah, but that's true with anything, Cassie. It's true when you get sick and you lose your health. It's true when you lose your job, you lose your car.